I'm Alan Hunter. I'm the co-director of the Glasgow Film Festival. And I want to thank you so much for watching La Seville, and also to just remind you that it's one of the films that's eligible for the Audience Award at the festival, sponsored by Caledonia McBrain. So please make sure that you vote, because it means a lot to the filmmakers, and it is our only award. And I'm very excited now to be joined by the director of La Seville, Teodora Mihai.
Hello,
Welcome to the festival.
Thank you for having us.
Not at all. When I saw the film, I thought this has to have been made by a Mexican director. And I know you're not Mexican, but it feels like you really know the country and you have an understanding of Mexico. And I wondered where that came from.
Well, it's a beautiful compliment, and I would say that I didn't expect to hear this also from the Mexican audience, which was amazing because they really felt represented. So, and of course it is because I know the country very well, and I feel a huge connection with it. I know it since I was a kid, so that helps.
Yeah.
And I also speak the language with a Mexican accent. That also helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's say that my first introduction to Mexico was when I was a teenager, and I was actually studying in San Francisco, California. But a lot of my friends and acquaintances, like, you know, the Hispanic community there is so large. So, you know, I had friends who were of Mexican origin, and that was my first connection to Mexico. And that's when I discovered the country that later on, unfortunately, evolved, you know, very negatively from the point of view of security and of citizens, you know, being exposed to this drug war that President Calderon declared in 2006. But of course, I mean, you know, in the border between Mexico and the United States has always been problematic, and you know, it didn't start in 2006. What did start, what did bring really the conflict to the streets was that moment, pretty much, where, you know, the kind of gentleman code that existed between cartels and the state, and fell somehow, you know, and so people all of a sudden were caught in between the normal citizens. And that was a drastic evolution that I witnessed from inside outside, since, you know, like, I have a lot of friends in Mexico. I was coming and going. In 2006, I mean, like, starting that period, I had a couple of years I didn't go. I returned in 2011, I believe, or 2012, I'm not sure anymore. But anyway, I was visiting friends at the border, and they told me, don't leave the house after 7, or like be back before 7. And that was very confronting to me. It was really, you know, I felt like the Mexico I had known in my teenage years was so far away. And at that moment, I was working on a project about Romanian kids and the difficulties they face growing up, you know, socio-economic difficulties. But living that Mexican reality, my brain started making, you know, connections. And I was like, okay, how is it to be a parent here and a kid here growing up in a region where people disappear overnight or during the day? And, you know, they just don't come back home. Nobody knows what happened. And so that was like the first spark of this project. So we're talking about like almost 10 years ago. That the first spark came, but I had to finish the project I was making at that moment, and then I promised myself I will go to Mexico to do research. That's always the way I proceed, whether I make documentaries or fictions. I always start with investigation, and for this film, it was almost 2.5 years of investigation, of speaking to a lot of kids, because originally I wanted to make this project from the point of view of children or of adolescents. And then during the research, I met a mother whose story and whose personality kind of blew me away. And the mother I'm speaking of is Miriam Rodriguez, who is the inspiration of the character of Cielo, and who became quite a famous activist, militant in Mexico, who unfortunately was killed in front of her house in 2017 on Mother's Day. Very symbolic day. I was lucky to meet her in 2015. That's when we started working together. And the reason why I decided, okay, this needs to be from the point of view of a mother, because one of the first things she told me is during the interview was, when I wake up in the morning, I want to kill or die. And that's just something that you don't hear very often, luckily. And especially not from a woman that has a middle-aged woman, mother, housewife profile, like physically. So the words, the violence of her words did not match with who I was seeing. And, that completely made a click in my head. I wanted to understand what someone has to go through to come to such drastic conclusions. And so that's where I asked her for permission to actually make a documentary, to follow her in an observational documentary style. We started working. I filmed her for 2 weeks, and it proved so impossible because we were a very small crew of 4 people. We had 4 bodyguards. And the bodyguards had to ask the help of the army. So we were actually moving in convoy to be able to follow her.
Wow.
And of course, that's not how you're a fly on the wall. That's how you're an elephant on the wall. So what I wasn't able to work. I mean, I didn't have the freedom to move. I wasn't invisible enough to really capture what I wanted to capture. So we were so visible that, once we were there was a whole theater in front of us, performing. And I knew that I wasn't capturing the reality I knew behind the scenes. And so basically, and of course, the security, the not wanting to put her in danger, her family, the other people I was filming, and of course, my crew. So basically, I had to rethink the project. And I discovered that fiction was going to give me the liberty to say what I needed to say in a safe manner.
And did you feel that in a way it's that kind of background in documentary and how the project started somehow still kind of affects the tone of it and how you approached it? Because it is fiction, but it does feel very much grounded in the reality of what was happening there.
Yes, well, it is the way that I see audiovisual projects in general. I don't really believe in documentary or fiction.
Okay.
That might be surprising or not, but it's a statement. But I basically, when I made a documentary previously, Waiting for August, actually a lot of people thought that it was a fiction because I didn't utilize voiceover. I didn't do interviews. It was really slices of life of the persons I was filming. And because my protagonists were children who were not looking into the camera, and a lot of spectators thought, no, these must be actors.
Yeah.
It was not. So let's say that I like to play with this hybrid. I like to technically in documentary use fictional tricks and vice versa. And for La Civil, you know, the fact that I utilize this camera over the shoulder, that I have long, how do you call them? Plan séquence, long sequences, no?
Okay.
Uninterrupted sequences. I thought, I mean, this is very documentary-like, because in documentary, you don't know what's going to happen. So you just are so close to your character, you don't want to
don't cut. Keep rolling.
Yeah. So in that sense, I utilized that for La Civil as well, to give you a sense of, I'm witnessing this with her. I'm with her, looking over her shoulder, basically, and it gave us this sense of being there with Cielo. And for me, you get more the experience and the anxiety, and you know, the feeling that the woman would be having, you know, utilizing technically this kind of filmmaking. So definitely, yeah, as a having done documentary and fiction, I kind of use both to make stories that feel very close to you.
And was this the first time that you were really having to cast roles and work with actors because of and how did that feel?
I studied fiction, so in my, you know, that's my formation. So it's something I knew how to do. I had done it in short film before that, and in La Civil, I utilized very experienced actors together with non-professional actors. And it's a beautiful mix. I love it. It's a very different way of working with them, of course. The non-professional actors have, you know, needed some coaching beforehand and needed some extra work, of course. But once they have that, and you put them together with someone who is an established actor, somehow they bring the best out of each other. You know, you have the freshness and the kind of almost improvisational quality of the non-professional actor, who kind of instigates the professional actor to, you know, get all its skill out, and it's a beautiful mix. It works for me. One of the scenes, for example, in La Civil, that I really love is the confrontation in prison between Puma and Cielo. Puma being practically a non-professional actor, he had done one project before that was it was a fiction, but it was a very improvised role. It was not so written out. There was a lot more space for improvisation for him. Whereas here, it was really kind of following a script. For me, it was pretty important what he would say, how he would say it. So, but I feel like it works wonders. You know,
I mean, he's amazing in it, because you start off, well, for quite a lot of the first half of the film, you really hate him, and he's so arrogant, and he embodies all these things that, like her, you could quite happily just, you know, kill him, hit him, do whatever. But throughout the film, I think your perspective on him changes so much, because it's like, well, you're kind of a victim of all of this as well in some way, and you're somebody's child too, and all those things that kind of just makes it much more kind of complex, and him much more human.
Yes, it was important for us to write out characters that are not black and white, because the situation is very complex in Mexico. And you know, the point of the film is that when the conflict gets so personal, when it's about family, because everyone does it for their family. If you notice in the film, Don Quique, who gets executed, does it for his son. You know, Cielo, in the end, she evolves from victim to perpetrator. Basically, she completely crosses her own, you know, moral lines. She does it for her daughter. Puma is also someone's father and someone's child. There is suffering there as well. But, like, do these people deserve it? They for sure have their own story, which we have not followed, but, things are complex. And it was important for us to have characters that have a lot of gray areas as well.
Again, that's what I really like about Cielo, because, I mean, she is changed by this in ways that are good and bad, because she's empowered now in a way that she wasn't before. And I love it when she cuts all her hair off and suddenly she has this power. But at the same time, she's tainted by the whole experience. She's become part of things. And again, that complexity in her, I assume, was something that you really wanted to bring out, that everybody is touched and corrupted in some way by the experience.
Yeah, that's a bit the well, I don't necessarily like to call it immoral, but it's of course one very important aspect that one understands, or that one comes out of the film, with this insight that when violence touches you, it inevitably kind of sucks you in, and you become part of this vicious cycle of violence. So the irony of that, it was something that really touched me when I met Miriam Rodriguez, and she had she had gained that insight through her own experience, and I thought it was very complex and very beautiful that she could articulate it in that way. She could see how she had evolved from victim to someone who's really kind of wanting to become them or worse, because they deserve it. They did her wrong, they did her child wrong. So that was what I wanted to have in La Civil as well.
And also, I mean, you are taking us into a very dangerous, violent world. How safe is it to shoot that? I mean, were you how do you do that and stay safe?
Well, the documentary was really life-threatening. That's why we had to let it go. But and luckily we did, because everyone knew, including Miriam Rodriguez. She knew that one of the unwritten rules of the drug war is that if she would continue, something would happen. It would happen. What everyone knew, what we didn't know was when, how, and who, And so basically, I mean, had we continued, I don't want to think about that scenario, but for me, it was important to stop. And then it happened anyway, because she didn't stop, because she felt like she had nothing else to lose. For her, she had lost too much already. But in the fiction, it was very important for me to stay in Mexico. I wanted to film the film in Mexico, but find a region that was less compromised, and luckily Mexico is so large, it's almost a continent, so you can find places that are safe enough. Doing research, and also the violence kind of moves around. There's regions that nowadays are fine, but like 5 years ago it was hell. So we did our research, and actually a very stable region is Durango, Mexico. Durango is a pretty northern state, but it's not. It's under Chihuahua, so it's under the border region. And it has a great tradition of filmmaking, actually. John Wayne had a famous ranch, La Jolla, where he apparently filmed his last 4 films. And we were lucky enough to be able to film in the ranch. We built some sets there for 2 important scenes of La Civil. And so that's why you also have this kind of Western look to it, because of the imagery. The landscapes are very beautiful and kind of Western-like.
And I was thinking as well, the film was at Cannes. It's been seen around the world. It's won awards. How has it been seen? Has it been seen in Mexico, and what kind of responses have you had to it? Or
it has been seen in a festival context. So we premiered in Morelia Film Festival last year, and it was despite the COVID, regulations, the theater could not be full, but it was as full as it could be. And the reactions were beautiful. That's what I was saying, that actually the response was that they kind of adopted me as a Mexican filmmaker, because they really felt like this was a very Mexican film, and very representative and respectful of the idiosyncrasies of the country and the people. So it was beautiful to be there and see that. And one, people made a line to kind of talk to me and take photos, and one meeting was really remarkable, because it was a couple who had recently lost their child. Okay. And they said, they told me, how could you come and tell this story? This story needs to be told, and we cannot stop telling these stories until it stops happening. And that's a kind of idealistic, wishful thinking, but it's true. A lot of when there is criticism in Mexico about it, is that again about violence in Mexico. I'm like, yeah, wait a minute, but as long as this violence keeps happening, why wouldn't we talk about it? I think we need to talk about it. So basically, yeah, that's the tension field there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering as well, what kind of mark has the film left on you, and also in what you want to make in the future?
Yes.
Just a small question.
Yeah, it made a huge mark. I mean, it was a very difficult project to carry, and it lasted. I mean, it took 7 years, including the documentary part of the investigation, and so it's. I got old on the project. It was a heavy one, but it gave me a huge amount of life experience, and I'm proud that we managed to tell it, because it had so many obstacles. But in 2017, especially when Miriam Rodriguez died, we kind of knew that we have to tell this. Like, it almost became a responsibility, and so it's out there now, and I'm happy for that. I'm grateful for that. What I want to do next is something not necessarily lighter, but something that doesn't need to take 7 years.
It's a romantic comedy in the south of France with two people on a yacht.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking, but no, it turns out that it's not going to be that simple as well. But we're staying in Europe again.
Okay.
So yeah. Not that future Mexican projects are out of the question, of course, but for now, I'm going to take a break from that.
Okay. Well, we wish you good luck with that, and thank you so much for La Seville, which is such a great film, and thank you for this conversation. Thank you, Teodora.
Thank you so much. Bye.